thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking this up. And I asked for a little latitude because it's a complicated matter, and I want to make sure everybody really understands that. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit of background, is that I'm a sucker for good advertising, okay? And it got me in trouble once as a kid. There used to be this ad for one of the Mackinac Island ferry companies, and understand that most of the ferries are really high-speed boats going over there, but there was one that took about 3 times as long, but they ran an ad that said, because getting there is half the fun. And I screamed and yelled enough, and my parents actually finally bought into it. They were furious as we sat there for 45 minutes getting to the island. And I quickly realized that getting there is not half the fun. Getting there is just getting there. The fun is on the island and in the port cities of St. Ignace and Mackinac City. But sadly, in recent years, getting there has become a huge part of the expense. So much so that my own family and families throughout the state are beginning to reconsider whether we even go to Mackinac Island or not. For a family of 4 to go over to ride their bikes for a day at the basic costs without any of the new options like the new enhanced boarding status where you can pay $12 and cut to the front of the line, it would cost between $225 and $249 just to get there, depending on the ages of your kids. Absolutely nobody comes to northern Michigan just to ride the ferry. They come from Mackinac Island, where more than 80% of Mackinac Island is a state park paid for by each and every one of us, by each and every one of our tax dollars. That the state provides such an incredible resource that the island draws more than 1.2 million visitors every year. And the people and the businesses on that island have made it such a great place that Mackinac Island has just been named for the 2nd year in a row America's top summer destination. That's why people come. For my own family of 6, that same day trip that we used to do all the time just to go up to ride our bikes would cost $370. And I can tell you what our family would do and what most families would do is they'd save that money. They'd take their bikes to Petoskey, ride around for the day, go out to a beautiful dinner, and leave with $200 still in their pocket. So because of this, because of the cost of getting to this unique resource provided largely by the state, by the public here, there's always been a reliance on, and because there's always been a reliance on private corporations to access these lands, that led to the creation of laws to protect this access and keep it affordable to visitors. Since there's no actual road to the island, the ferries basically are the road. It has been a mutually beneficial relationship for 125 years, where the island benefits from efficient and safe transportation, and the ferry companies benefit by being able to make money transporting to people to a location that the state, private industry, and people have made so desirable. To be sure, ferry companies are entitled to fair compensation for their services, but the arrangement has always been the product of a public and private cooperation, whereby their services are provided under strict oversight and regulation to ensure affordable access to an important part of this state. Some will argue that there are technically 3 ways to get to the island. You can fly if you have the money and you're one of the few dozen people who can get a ticket on any given day to get to the island. You can bring your own boat if you're lucky enough to have your own boat and find a dock available at the 80 Slip Marina. But for most of the 1.2 million visitors, we have no choice but to use the ferries. There's been challenges with this system for decades, but it's worked fairly well because we've always had, until last year, competition. Here's a bit of background on that subject. A few years ago, there were 3 ferry companies. Then Starline bought Arnold Line, and then there were 2. Then in early 2022, Shepler's Ferry was acquired by the Hoffman family of companies, a private equity firm based in Naples, Florida, that according to their own materials has acquired 200-plus brands and properties in 400-plus locations in 30 countries around the world. Then in June of last year, June 2024, that same company then purchased Starline to make the takeover complete. One private company now owns all of the ferries and all of the ferry docks on Mackinac Island. They now completely control virtually all access to Mackinac Island, including that Michigan State Park that we all pay for that constitutes more than 80% of that island. Because the same private equity firm has purchased all of the ferry docks on Mackinac Island, there is now no place for a competitor to even land on the island, making legitimate competition impossible. Now, I'm not an attorney, but to a layman, this sounds like a clearly uncompetitive business environment and potentially a solid antitrust case. But again, that's not for me to determine. That's an issue for the Attorney General. But keep in mind, there are tangible factors in our laws and regulation that actually help protect this potential monopoly. Nobody can just go and build a new dock. It would take years to even get a permit to open a new pier. There are very strict controls, as there should be, from EGLE, DNR, EPA, and so many others over the construction of any new commercial dock, even if there were space for it. So the only check we have on the current system are the laws that were designed with this exact situation in mind. So stay with me for just a minute. In 1899, a state law established the City of Mackinac Island Charter. Mackinac Island today, still to this day, is the only city in Michigan that does not have what's called home rule. Their charter is controlled by us, and they can't change it. We have to change it. That charter was in no small part crafted to protect the public, even in the face of anti-competitive situations. That law is still in force today. It gives the City of Mackinac Island the ability to, quote, establish or authorize, license, and regulate ferries to and from the city or any place therein, or from one part of the city to another, and to regulate and prescribe from time to time the charges and prices for transportation of persons or properties thereon. That's pretty clear. That language was clear to the people who wrote it back in 1899 when they used to think with common sense. Whatever it cost a person to get to the island on a ferry was subject to regulation from the island. But we no longer live in such clear thinking days. Nowadays, people parse words to the point where, with clever wording, a person or a company could get around this existing law by recategorizing the fees in a creative manner. And that's exactly what happened recently when the new owner of all the ferries wanted to hike the rates again. This time, Mackinac Island said no. And the response was basically thumbing their nose at the statute that's been in place since 1899. No fare increase? Fine. We'll just jack up the fees on parking or baggage or bikes. We'll get around your laws that have been in place for more than 125 years. Last year, for instance, there was no fee for day parking. Today, it's a minimum of $10, depending on where you park. Last year, when there was still competition, the ticket fare for a trip to the island was $34. This year, it went from $34 to $36 to $38, and we're only in mid-June, plus a new $3 convenience fee, and day parking that went from free to $10 at the cheapest rate. So with none of the extras like that new line cutting feature added, at a minimum, the cost for a person going to the island for a day went from $34 to $51. That's a 50% increase since competition was eliminated less than 1 year ago. Now, I am all for the free market, but in the face of an uncompetitive environment that has such dramatic implications for access to an important public part of our state, we need to take action. Now, ideally, we'd live in a world where the people could still read that 1899 law for what it was and what it's been accepted to mean for 125 years. But unfortunately, we need a little bit more clarity in our modern litigious society. And ideally, Mackinac Island would be able to just handle this on their own, but since they are the only city in Michigan that does not have home rule, we have to do it through what's called a local act here in Lansing, which means we need a 2/3 vote by the legislature to pass it. Once we pass this bill, it doesn't actually change the law. It simply allows Mackinac Island to put this measure on their ballot for their residents to determine. Again, something every other city in Michigan can already do. So whether you're with us or not on the matter of providing some oversight to a corporation that single-handedly controls access to a part of our state, then I at least ask you to support this bill in the spirit of allowing the city of Mackinac Island the same self-determination that every other city in the state already has. I thank you for your consideration. I'm open to any questions you have, though we have real experts on the situation about to testify after me.